Rosensweig show. It's just delighted to be here. I am dedicating the show to all the citizens, to IDF soldiers, to people who are living in Israel and visiting and volunteering there, in particular after October 7th. And of course, we dedicate all of our energy, which is going out to the hostages. God willing, they should be returned as soon as today, and they should be healthy and come back to their family. I'm Yisrael Chai, Oseh Shalom b'Mermav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael, v'Yamru Amen. And there should be peace in Israel. There should be peace everywhere. And also, I want to dedicate this to peaceful people in the entire world, because there are many out there who are our friends, and we have to be cognizant of that. My podcast nowadays is very, very focused on Israel, for obvious reasons. I have brought on guests who have an affiliation with Israel. Either they live there or they visit there and volunteer there. Most recently, I spoke with Dr. Bradley Strauss, who's a world-renowned cardiologist. And as soon as October 7th happened, he hopped on a plane and he flew to Israel and he volunteered there in a local hospital. Take a look at that. It was wonderful to do the interview, and he's a terrific human being. I've also interviewed Devorah Mason. She was my first podcast in return after taking a bit of a hiatus. Devorah is my niece, and she lives in Jerusalem. She's a mother of 5, and she has children in the Army. She's very articulate, a wonderful storyteller, and she fills in all the blanks. For we who are wondering, what is it like to be a mother living in Israel today with a child in the IDF, or with younger children at home, whom you have to explain the most difficult things that have happened to our people on October 7th and afterwards. I interviewed Eli Rubenstein last week, and Eli Rubenstein is a storyteller. He is the senior leader, spiritual leader at Congregation Habonim, and he is also the international director of education for March for Living. He's a dear friend, and I love him a lot. And I think that by listening to stories, we are able to have a sense of calmness. And Eli does that for us, and we need that right now, we Jewish people, because we have what they call in Israel, they call it lachatz, a little bit of pressure. I am so delighted to have with me today Noach Braun. Noach, welcome.
Hello, shalom everybody, for all the viewers and listeners.
Shalom, shalom. Now, Noach is a beautiful man who is the co-founder and CEO of the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind, of course, which is in Israel. And for the next hour or so, we're going to take this opportunity to understand the man, what it was that motivated him to get into the business of guide dogs, as well as to appreciate what dogs mean, both guide dogs and otherwise, to Israeli society, especially right now. So I'm very, very excited to have this schmooze. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to email them or communicate with me on Facebook. So welcome, Noach. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm very grateful to have you as a guest. We have a mutual friend in Eli Rubenstein. And Eli, as I spoke about only a few minutes ago, he has worked with the Israel Guide Dog Center for many, many years. And I think he's done a magnificent job. He told me a story that he spoke somewhere even prior to his affiliation with Israel Guide Dogs. And the next day he got a phone call from Bluma Appel, who said, I want to give you $1 million. You must have fallen in love with Eli immediately, no?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as we started this special show together with you, Avrum, we have a lot of good friends in Canada. So let me use the opportunity to thank all our friends in Canada, from east to west, from Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, that support the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind. But yes, it's connected to, we just finished Hanukkah. So I met this amazing gentleman, Norman Leventhal, in the first candle of Hanukkah of 1986 with one dream. Here's a Hanukkah to remind us. We just had Hanukkah. And I had one dream. I wanted to start a guidebook school in Israel. At the time, people, the government were very blind and deaf towards the blind's needs. They said to people with visual impairment, hey, would you like to have a guide dog? No problem, take a cane. That was the blind answer of our government at the time. So we need to change it. So we started in North America. It's a long story with Norman. Norman and Phyllis Leventhal absorbed me as like they adopted me as parents, and Norman helped me to get to one of the schools in the U.S. So in North America, it started in the U.S. But coming to Canada many years ago, Eli every year he would come with the youth to Poland to do the March of the Living, a week there and then a week in Israel. And one day he came and he said to me, Noach, here's an envelope with a donation because my late dog Mickey, at the time he was alive, made a damage. So here's a donation, and I want you one day to come to Israel, to Canada. So many years ago, I called Eli. I was in a prefab home on the same location, just in the beginning of the organization in the 90s, and I said to him, in a year, in 6 months or so, the GA, the General Assembly of the Jewish Federation, is going to take place in the convention center in Toronto. So he said, you must come. I said, yeah, but I'm coming in a few months, not now. I'm giving you, a good notice. So Eli, with his style, he said, wait a minute, stay online. And he put a lady on the other line.
Right.
And you hear this amazing lady with a very high-pitched, Noach, tell me about the puppies. I love these puppies. And then after a few minutes, she said to Eli and me, okay, guys, I'm very busy. Noach, come and see me. And she hangs up. And
Natak.
yes. So, and Eli said, look, Noach, when Bluma asks you to come and see her, you have to come. I said, Eli, but I cannot. I have dogs to train. I have a class with blind people. Let's call Norman. So we called Norman. Norman met Eli on the phone. And a week later, Norman, first time in his life, took the plane from Philadelphia, met Eli and other people, and Bluma, the late Bluma Appel. And this is, yes. So specifically, if we mention Eli Rubenstein, I don't have to tell you, he's a mensch. And, is the best. I cannot emphasize enough what I feel about Eli. He has a big heart, and more than that. And today we have a very nice group in Canada that support us. And our current chairperson is Marsha Sokolovsky, and Atara Derek. She's our executive director, and together with their leadership, the skies are the limit. And needless to say, how much we need help for inside Israel and in the diaspora before the war and during the war and after a war. And we are not alone. And we feel the heart that you give us, the warmth that you give us from a distance. We are one people. So.
Do you get a sense of that? Do you get a sense that diaspora Jews are incredibly involved since October 7th?
Very much so. And I happened to, after the war, the war started on October 7th, and a few weeks later, I had to come to the community in Toronto to give a dog to Achia Klein, who lost his vision in Gaza in 2013. And you should interview Achia Klein one day. His family circumstances right now brought him to Toronto with his dear wife Shirley and the 2 kids. And the dog, his previous dog Knight, passed away suddenly. And I jumped on a plane. Of course, El Al, the only airline leaving Israel, and I made it to Toronto and placed him with Joy, his new guide dog. And when I was there helping him with his new dog for 8 days, I met a lot of people in Toronto, and we hugged each other. And yes, I do feel very much so. We are not alone.
No, this is actually one of the messages that I'm putting out on my podcast, is that we have many non-Jewish friends, and we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be aware of it. We have to embrace them. I myself have a social media platform on TikTok, and I've been talking to both Jews and non-Jews. And many of them are saying, we love the Jewish people, we love Israel, and we want to be there for you. We want to help.
Yeah, let me clarify
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me clarify one thing. I chose a lifetime mission to help people. So for me, as somebody who loves people, human being, it's very difficult to see hate. And and we serve people in Israel, regardless their gender and religion. We serve people who cares about themselves, and they need a dog, and they call us. Remember, 20% of us are not Jewish,
Yes.
and so we serve people. So for me, it's so difficult, to see what's happening in my country. And needless to say, what we are all bleeding since October 7th. And remember, a few months before that, we went to see Golda, the amazing movie, and we spoke for a week about what happened 50 years ago. And then October 7th came. So, but in the same time, as we are bleeding, blind people with blindness, and people with PTSD needs us. So, in fact, as we are talking now, I'm in the office, but 15 meters away from my office is now dinner. We have 4 people with blindness receive their guide dogs. So we have a class. We call them students. They came to receive their guide dogs. So we need to continue. The Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind is needed 365 days a year, before war, during war, and after war. It's a needed organization all year.
No, specifically about the war in Israel, where were you on October 7th?
Specifically, I woke up, I was at home, and the siren came off, and I think it was Saturday morning, if I'm not mistaken. And my daughter was home, so we went to the shelter. And then an hour later, I had to come here to the kennels because we asked people not to come. So we had limited staff to make sure that nobody would get hurt. And we had to do our duty because, remember, we have dogs here, puppies and dogs. Yes. And thank God we live. Orna and myself, Orna is also one of the founders of the organization, and we are partners for life. And so we did the duty, and slowly, we decided how to operate in the beginning. Unfortunately, this area of the organization is one of the areas that we had a lot of sirens and rockets, and thank God that we have Iron Dome. And so basically, I was here.
Do you get afraid for yourself? Do you get afraid for your wife? Do you get afraid for the dogs?
I'm not afraid. I'm sad for what happened for the 1400, and we don't have to. It's much more than that. All these people that got killed, murdered, and all the rest of it, terrible, and all the injured soldiers and of course the people who are still there, unfortunately, in Gaza. And remember, myself, I was a paratrooper. I'm 62, soon going to be 63. In 82, I was in a war in Lebanon. And in 2002 as well, I was in an operation in Tulkarem near Jenin. And so I'm a paratrooper. So I don't have a fear about myself. If I could go now in Gaza and continue as a paratrooper, I would go there. But the army doesn't need me now, and my miluim now, my reserves, my duty now is to make sure that the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind will continue. And unfortunately, as we all know, we already have people who were injured in their eyes, and needless to say about how many people will need help in other ways. It's not immediately the post-trauma, but it will come later. And about 8 years ago, we started to give dogs to soldiers who suffer with PTSD. So we have about close to 240 active guide dog owners and about 40 soldiers who suffer from and carry the PTSD with them. And we all these amazing dogs are life changers. Thanks to our amazing Klavim, Kelev, a dog is kulo lev, full of heart.
Colin.
So it's only
No,
thanks to this.
yeah, I
Yes,
just want to go back for a second because the Jewish community, those who are watching, those who are viewing the show and other shows, we're reeling here in the diaspora. We find that we're getting a lot of strength from the Israelis because of the Achdut, because of the unity that the nation is showing. I understand that after October 7th, obviously everybody in Israel wanted to be involved. So you took a number of your guide dogs to hotels in the vicinity, in the area, just to make people happy, right?
correct. We had, well, first one of our volunteers happened to be Canadian and happened to have my first name, Noach Kaplan. We gave him a big van and all equipment. And he joined a group of volunteers that went to Sderot and all these kibbutzim to evacuate all the dogs that were left alone. And they saved a lot of dogs. And later on, of course, our team, the trainers and also the puppy walkers, the foster families with puppies, started to go to hospitals and to hotels just for the people to hug dogs to, and it's an amazing medicine, and I don't think that I have to tell dog lovers what dog give to people. So yes, I feel very, very lucky. You know why? Because I have my eyes, I have my legs, I can wake up in the morning, I can walk, I can run, I can enjoy life. And also, I'm lucky because every morning for the last 40 years almost, I'm focused. I know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go to psychologist to ask why. There's
Okay.
no why.
Very good.
It's so clear, you know.
You know Viktor Frankl, the great Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the greatest selling books of all time. That's essentially what he said is what you just said. It's the idea that when people secure their meaning and purpose in life, that in itself is therapeutic. So your point is very well taken.
And also, I'm lucky that I have an amazing team here, about 50 people. And as I said, we have a lot of volunteers here. Right now, we have an amazing volunteer that came just as the war began. A fine from Richmond, Virginia, called us. We had a Zoom. He had tears in his eyes. He says, "I want to come." And he's there. He's here until Christmas Day. He's leaving Christmas Day in October on December 25, and so we are full of people who loves us. And our charity is in 4 countries: in Israel, the U.S., Canada, and UK. So we have a lot of good friends, and that's the only way that we can operate. Without friendship and warmth and relationship, it will be difficult. So again, I would like to thank all of them that watching or listening to this show.
You are a great director, by the way. You're a great director. I was a director of an organization for about 20 years via Hafta. And
I remember this is how I met you. You didn't
yes,
meet me, but Ellie invited me to one of your amazing evenings in I forgot the Toronto Culture big hall, and I was I was moved by what you did.
yeah, yeah. But by the way, thank you very much. One of the reasons why I'm commenting on your leadership is because you're extraordinarily good at reaching out to your supporters. You're very, very good at it, and supporters appreciate it because they're relying on the organization to give them their sense of meaning. Noah, you grew up with a tremendous love of dogs. When you did your army service, as you mentioned before, you did it training dogs, right, for operations with military operations, I'm assuming. And then later on, once you had finished the army, you probably did some traveling like others. You ended up in America and you wanted to be trained by one of the guide dog centers there. They all closed their doors on you. You met Norman, as you talked about before, your angel, I assume you would say. And ultimately, what you did together with him and his wife and your wife, you started up Israel's Guide Dog Center for the Blind, the very first one. Now there are many in America. There are even lots in Japan, across Asia. I came across a guide dog center in a place called Boring, Oregon. So they're ubiquitous. They're out there, and I am fascinated by your connection with dogs or animals. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of what is the intersection between us, humankind, and the Kelev and the dog. Where do we meet?
Well, we have to remember that 10,000s of years or millions of years, the Adam Kadmon, the first human being, started a relationship with the wolves in the nature, and slowly, they learned that they can give to each other. It's a win-win situation, and and of course, we come later when these wolves and foxes and jackals are already domesticated. And interesting enough, I have a book here in my office that shows the ancient history of the relationship between people with blindness and guide dogs. And there's a drawing there from the ruins of Pompeii. So you're talking about 2,000 years ago, they already started training guide dogs, maybe primitive way, and then later on, guide dogs came to us thanks to the Germans, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever. During First and Second World Wars, a lot of people were injured. So the Germans were the first ones that started in the modern history. But the relationship between blind people with blindness and guide dogs. And let me just correct you, because before I was born, before the state of Israel started in 48, before that, an amazing couple by the name Professor Rudolf and Rudolfina Menzel escaped the Hitler and the Nazis, and they came to Palestine because Hitler wanted to use their know-how with dogs. And they said to him, thank you, we're not going to do that. And they escaped, they came to Palestine, and they started the first dog unit with the gangs in Israel, with the Agnon, Etzel, and Merki, and then to the IDF. And then they started the first guide dog school in Israel before I was born. It was still Palestine. Even Helen Keller visited them, and it was still Palestine, dogs helping blind people. And the sad story is that Rudolfina Menzel, as a pioneer, and her husband never gave the torch to the next generation. And when they were too old and passed away, then everything stopped. And that was at the end of 60s, beginning of the 70s. I was still a kid. And so it took time until I met Norman and until we restarted the Esh, the Medura,
The bonfire.
the fire, yes. But thank God we gave more than 800 dogs all over the years to people. We changed their lives, their families, the society. And when we speak about society, and it's a challenge not only in Israel, it's the challenge all over. Sometimes people are not educated about guide dogs or all kind of other service dogs. And some people, from lack of knowledge, are being mean or unfair towards somebody who wants to come into a supermarket, a shopping mall, or wants to go on a bus or take a Uber, or here in Israel get taxi, and sometimes they get refusals, and it's amazing. It's so sad that so there's so much that we need to do here to educate, to do marketing, for people to understand that this dog is their eyes. It's a partner. They cannot go from A to B before. So people should be more compassionate, but also understand the law in Israel. And I'm sure
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
and that
No,
against discrimination. And so there's so much that we need to do, not only with people like you and me, that we are 50, 60, 70. We need to start in the kindergarten, in the synagogues and schools and education. And there's a lot to do.
no, just to sort of encourage your point before about the genesis of dogs and humankind, International Guide Dog Federation has a wonderful piece on the history of guide dogs, and it states, while there is evidence that man's relationship with wolves, as you were saying, stretches back 400,000 years, man's domestication of dogs coincides with the evolution of early breeds of dogs about 150,000 years ago. The first special relationship between a dog and a blind person is lost in the mists of time, but perhaps the earliest recorded example is depicted in a first century AD mural in the buried ruins of a Roman Herculean area. There are other records from Asia and Europe up to the Middle Ages of dogs leading blind men. Now, the first systematic attempt to train dogs to aid blind people came around 1780 of Les Queens Vien Hospital for the blind in Paris. Shortly afterwards, in 1788, Joseph Reisinger, a blind sieve maker from Vienna, trained a Spitz so well that people often question whether he was blind, which is very interesting. We talked about the intersection between humankind and dogs a little bit. I myself had a dog, Max, for 14 years. He was a German Shepherd. You do train some of those, mostly golden retrievers, a couple poodles here and there, because some people are allergic to hair, right? I want to take the other side now and ask you about those who are visually impaired. Sometimes the term blind is used, but more often than not, we say visually impaired. What what is it like to work with individuals? You said you're so lucky that you have your sight. What is it like to work with individuals who can't see or who can't see what we can see? Are there rules that you've developed for yourself and your team to understand those who have challenges visually? I think that world is very lost to most of us. What can you tell us about that world?
Well, first of all, I'm going to recommend you and challenge you that you should invite one of your future programs one of our clients. Either it's going to be Achia Klein, who is next door in Toronto, or somebody else, he or she that speaks fluent English. And look, if it wasn't connected with the human being, with people with blindness, I wouldn't be here. As much as I love dogs, I need to see the connection, the relationship, the it's how they work together, the trust, and but each person, he or she, I've met so many people with blindness in my life that each person is individual. So I wouldn't like to categorize. I wouldn't like to put them in a box. Each person is a person, and many of them have stories for more than an hour, much more than an hour, to tell you amazing stories about people with blindness that I'm very small compared to them.
Yes.
And why do I say people with blindness? Because I want to people remember it's not about their blindness. It's about them being people, human beings like us, but also they have to carry the blindness, either congenitally or they lost their vision due to eye disease or in the war situation. And many people that I work with over the years or I'm friendly with, I forget that they are blind. I don't, and they see. They don't see from their eyes. They see from their brain, from their soul. I don't. The more I'm with people with blindness, the less I remember that they are blind. And society needs to understand that, and not all the time look, not focus. We society many times, sighted society many times are more blind than blind people. So it's really it's different. It's up to the individual that I've met. And for me, every person with blindness that decides to get out from bed and take a cane or a dog, he or she, they are heroes.
Yes.
It's not easy. Try to imagine, take the subway in Toronto, go downtown, get a degree in university, walk the streets, go and get a job, build a family with your blindness. They are heroes, and the fact that we can give them the partner, that the linkage between life and the independence that they want to regain with these amazing dogs, that glues them, and society suddenly. I would be never negative about a cane, but the change between a cane and a dog, it's dramatic, because most of us work with dogs, but so the change, the suddenly, we're moving from a cane to a dog, suddenly people sees them more, ask questions. Can I pet your dog? Yes, no. But you see more that they are closer to society uh, with this amazing creature, a dog. So, so I'm not
No,
sure if I answered your question, but
no, it's good enough. You answered a few of my questions. We're going to come back to seeing eye dogs, which they don't call them anymore. By the
well,
way, for a very interesting reason. What's
the
that?
Seeing Eye is an amazing, amazing organization in Morristown, New Jersey, but it's a trade name. It's like
It's a trade name,
Frigidaire, it's like Nescafe. It's
right?
the
And most people don't know that.
what?
Yes, that organization has trademarked the term "seeing eye dog," so
Yeah,
you can't use that term. It's guide dogs, right?
correct.
I find
And
that
we
fascinating.
we are we are fortunate enough to be a full member of the International Federation of Guide Dog Schools, and recently we joined also the ADI, the Assistant Dogs International, and without them over the years we wouldn't achieve our goals. So because we have so many colleagues that support, but now we not only getting support, we give back. So for example, in Canada, we have relationship with few Canadian guide dog schools in near Ottawa and Oakville, and we have many many good friends. So in life, you're not only getting, you have to give back. That's about friendship. So
Right, right. And interestingly, we the Jewish people, we are supposed to be a light unto the nations. So it's really quite compelling that the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind is a light to many organizations around the
and
world.
started in the
Kol
first
hakavod,
candle of
kol hakavod.
Hanukkah, and
What's that? Say again.
started in the first candle of Hanukkah, 1986. So,
Right, right. It was a Hanukkah mitzvah. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned before, we're really excited to have a special guest with us. Somebody many of you know, most of you like him. His name is Eli Rubenstein. Eli, you there with us?
Hi, good afternoon and good evening, Noach, and good afternoon, Avrum. Noach, so nice to see you. Hi.
what a surprise!
And back to you. Thank you.
So the reason I brought Eli on, we've actually mentioned it at the top of the show, we would have a surprise guest by the name of Eli Rubenstein, is because firstly, Noach and Eli are dear friends, and Eli chaired the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind here in Canada for a number of years, and did an outstanding job of it. And I thought it would just be very nice, very Hamish, as they say, very warm to bring on a friend. And Eli, of course, is a storyteller, just to hear a couple of stories about your history, your past with Noach, the Guide Dog Center, and maybe a couple of stories as well.
Sure. I mean, one of the first stories that Noach shared with me still moves me to this day. Noach, you'll remember the story, is about an ultra-Orthodox Jew who lost his vision, and he became very depressed, and he couldn't go to shul, he couldn't daven, with a minyan, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor says, you should get yourself a guide dog. But in the Haredi ultra-Orthodox community, there's not that many dogs. This is not something they usually practice, having pets and dogs and things like that. And he kept getting more depressed and more depressed. And finally, he went to his rabbi and says, listen, is it okay if I get a guide dog? The rabbi says, sure, why not? Can I bring him to synagogue? And the rabbi said, sure, you can bring him to synagogue as long as we don't count him in a minyan. But as long as the dog sits outside and waits. And that's what happened. So he started going to minyan with his guide dog every day, said the prayers. Guide dog would lie outside the door to the shul. And he felt so good about this. He said that once I got my guide dog, it gave me wings. I felt like an independent human being. And then he said something what I always remember Noah telling me. He said, sometimes my dog almost makes me forget I am blind. Sometimes my guide dog almost makes me forget I'm blind. And what a mitzvah that is when you can give a blind person that feeling. Almost they forget their blindness because of these wonderful, wonderful companions. So that was one of the first stories that Noach shared with me. Can I share a story with you Noach doesn't like so much? Is that okay, Avram?
Yes, I would prefer
Noach,
that.
can you
Actually.
handle it? This is not one of Noach's favorite
No other
stories.
choice. I have to be polite. We Israelis are very polite.
Yeah, very polite. Yeah.
So 99.9% of the time, Noach's guide dogs are trained perfectly, 99.9% of the time. But once in a while, it's a little bit of a misstep. Once in a while, they show their, for better lack of a word, human. So, Noach, you know the story I'm going to tell? Do you know what you want to guess?
I think
The
it's
story
about
is,
the time too. Yeah.
that's right. So Chaim is on a bus, okay, and his guide dog is on one of these buses Friday afternoon. Everyone's gone shopping for Shabbos. And all of a sudden, he feels his guide dog kind of moving a little bit. And obviously, when you're a guide dog on a bus, you want to get a little more comfortable. You want to get a little more leg room, whatever. So he goes along with his guide dog and moves a bit more, moves a bit more. The guide dog keeps moving in a certain direction. He's not getting himself comfortable, but he's trying to be amenable to his guide dog. The bus stops. He gets off the bus, and all of a sudden, from the window, just as the bus is pulling away, he hears a woman screaming out, "Ganav, Ganav, who Ganav, Akelim, Ganav, Sheli." What happened was the woman was screaming that his guide dog had stolen her chicken. So what was going on there? The dog wasn't moving to get more comfortable. There was a bag of chicken right in the shopping bag, right next to his nose, and he couldn't resist. So I always think of that moment of, the bus driver driving off, the woman screaming, Chaim standing there, and the dog just munching on that wonderful piece of chicken. And it's different worlds. The bus driver got home, told the story to his family. The woman got home to her family, said, "There's no chicken tonight." And Chaim tells the story, and the guide dog's very happy. And he's telling all his friends about this incredible bus ride. You should take it one time. So we all have different realities.
I knew Avrum that it was a mistake to put Eli on the show, but that was the late Chaim, so amazing person that he was my first person for me to give him a dog. And the first story that Eli said, that was Benjamin Kapag from Rehovot. He also passed away. And he called me Benjamin at the time. He said, "Noach, from now on, your name is not Noach, you are Dr. Noach, because you gave me my sight back."
Yes.
So I'm not a doctor.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Eli, we who know you well also knew Mickey. Mickey was your golden was a lab or golden retriever?
Labrador retriever, yes.
Labrador. He was a beautiful dog. He was full of energy, right? Very much like you. I think he shared a character with you, personality. And I remember when we used to go to shul at Habonim, you would always bring your dog, right?
Yes.
And sometimes to the chagrin of others, but mostly people thought it was fantastic to go to shul where there's this wonderfully happy dog walking around and greeting children and saying hello to parents and so on. I want to ask you a question that I asked Noach before. You having such a great love for dogs, for animals in general, I know you feed squirrels every day. What's the intersection between humankind and animals?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. From my childhood, I've always felt this real connection to animals. I think there's an honesty, there's a spontaneity, there's an immediacy, there's a lack of guile. And my dog was everybody thinks about their dog. My dog was the most loving, open, generous. He could have ran for mayor of Toronto. He wanted to greet everybody. And in fact, my dog is what brought Noach and I together. As you said, I took my dog everywhere. I remember I went to a guide dog meeting in somebody's house, a very fancy house, and I found out later the woman wasn't so happy about it. We're all sitting around the table, and my dog jumped on one of the chairs and just sat there like he was part of the meeting. I thought it was cute. She didn't think it was so cute. But the way Noach and I met was through my dog. I got my dog, I think it was in the early 2000s. And when he was a puppy, he couldn't be apart from me, and I also couldn't be apart from him. So I took him everywhere I went. And I'd performed a wedding for a wonderful young couple in Toronto. And the mother said, "I have a book I want you to read. Come pick up the book." So I went to the house. It was in the Baby York Mills area. And I knocked on the door with my dog, my puppy with me. I couldn't even leave him in the car, God forbid, for 2 minutes. That would be too much for both of us. And the housekeeper of I think she was a Filipino, opened the door. And all of a sudden I hear a dog barking from inside the house, barking and barking and barking. My dog immediately hears another dog. He runs inside. 2 minutes later, the housekeeper comes out with a book, says, "Take your dog," and slams the door in my face, which I thought was just a bit rude. Anyways, this is the mother of the son whose wedding I just performed a few weeks before that. A few days later, I get a phone call from the mother who was quite agitated. It was a voicemail, and it said, "Rabbi," because I performed the wedding, even though I'm not ordained, but that's what people call me, despite whatever I try to tell them otherwise. And she says, "The part of this message you're going to like, part of this message you're not going to like. The part of this message you're going to like, you did a wonderful job at our children's wedding. We're watching the video. All that stuff is great. What you're not going to like is your wonderful puppy dog, who is not trained, ran into my house and scratched one of my priceless Jack Bush paintings." I'm not a maven in art, but apparently Jack Bush is a very famous artist. And right now we're on the phone with a professional artist who's figuring out from New York how he can fly in and restore the painting to its original integrity. So the message is: Rabbi good, dog bad, get your dog trained, Lashana Tova, Happy New Year, click. It was around New Year. And I felt terribly guilty. And I was thinking I'm going to call her up and tell her my dog has different taste in art. I don't know what he did, but I called her up and said, "I'm so sorry. What can I do? How much does it cost?" She said, No. Don't worry about the cost. You can never afford that. I said, "Well, I can mortgage my house. Why not?" And I apologized profusely, but I could tell she was still somewhat rankled. So the next time I was in Israel was my first visit to the Guide Dog Center, and I fell in love with the place. When I came back, I made for which me was a nice donation to the Guide Dog Center. And then Noah called me up and said, "Can you get involved?" I said, "Well, what would you like?" And the first thing we did was we put an article in the Canadian Jewish News about the Guide Dog Center. Meanwhile, she called me because I made the donation in her honor, and she called me. It wasn't necessary, but it was so nice of you. So that's how I got involved with the Guide Dog Center. And then we do that article in the Canadian Jewish News after Noach reached out to me after I made my donation. And I got a phone call a couple of days later from Bluma Appel. Do you remember that name?
Yeah, we told the story already.
Oh, you told the story already. Okay,
yeah, we told the story. Yes.
So
yes.
You never know how one
But
story.
basically, to summarize it, I needed not to thank you. I need to thank late Mickey, your dog.
Exactly,
It's only because of him.
So you never know how one story leads to another story. But for me, the most moving story in all my years of being involved with Noach and the March and the Guide Dog Center and the March of the Living is, unless you've told this story already, for many years I would go to the Guide Dog Center, and the blind people would come up to me and they would tell me, "We want to come on the March of the Living. We want to come to Poland. We want to be part of this experience." And I would ask why, because we're part of the Jewish people. We're part of the history and destiny of the Jewish people. We want to go on the experience. We want to learn about the Holocaust. We want to come back and teach about what we've learned. We are part of Amcha. We're part of this nation. We want to feel part of it. And I said, "Okay, let's organize it." In my mind, you know what I said? I said, how can you take people on the March of the Living? How can you bear witness when you cannot see? How's that possible? But of course, I didn't say that, right? I remember one of the blind people told me, he said, "I have so many challenges in life, but when I hear the stories of the Holocaust survivors, my challenges pale in comparison to what they've gone through." And they came on the trip, and I promise you, they saw more than you and I could see, because they're only using all their senses. They were seeing with their heart. And the most moving part, there were two moving parts of that trip that I'll never forget. One part is when a Holocaust survivor comes over to one of our blind people and his guide dog. You'll remember the name. He was a teacher, and he comes over and he says, "I'm so happy to see somebody from Israel with a guide dog in Auschwitz, because I was in these camps 70 years ago, and I saw how the Nazis treated Jews with dogs. And to come back 70 years later, seeing dogs not killing Jews, torturing Jews, attacking Jews, but helping Jews, what a difference." And the second moment from that experience was another young woman who was, her dog's name was Petal. Remind me the name, Noach? Liron and Petal. Liron is in the Majdanek gas chamber, the former gas chamber in Majdanek. And she's so overwhelmed with what God is saying, she falls to her knees, I should say, and is overcome with tears and sobbing and anguish. And to the next 2 minutes, her guide dog, Petal, comes over and licks the tears from her eyes, and sensing how upsetting, how emotionally she was. And that for me was such an example of what the lessons of the Holocaust are. Here we are in a place of blind hatred, endless blind hatred, in a death camp, in a gas chamber. And what is her dog doing to her? Her dog is doing to her blind love in a place of blind hatred.
Eli, let me interrupt. For the viewers and listeners, people should get the link of the movie Blind Love that you created. It's an amazing movie. It's about 30 minutes, if I'm not sure.
25 minutes, yes. It was shown on CBC and
Amazing
PBS, television. Yes, I agree. Definitely we should share the link with people, for sure.
Eli, I want to thank you for joining us. Those were amazing stories. That, you know what, the last story brought tears to my eyes, because I can only imagine what that looked like, and in terms of the place, in terms of the context, and in terms of the dog licking tears from her eyes. That's very, very powerful. No, do you have a lot of stories like that where people are going through trauma and your dogs will console them?
Well, I think that I wouldn't say, well, first of all, losing your vision, like unfortunately we have already people who lost the vision now in the war, in October 7th war. So that's a trauma, yes. So it will take time until they will be ready to have a dog. And by the time they will be ready, let's say some will to take them a year or 2 or 3. When they will be ready, we are here to help them. So when the dog comes, then there's a change. Many years ago, Norman, we spoke about Norman. So Norman would come 3 4 times a year to Israel, and he would have a notebook, and he would go with me to meet guide dog owners either outside near their home or when they came here on class. And I would never forget the story of Norman interviewing Moti Barzilai, the late Moti Barzilai. And so he has a notebook to get quotations so he can share with donors in the States. So he says to him, Moti, did Charlie change your life? So Charlie was his guide dog, chocolate Labrador. And Moti, kind of with his cynical sense of humor, said, no. So Norman said, what do you mean? I came all the way from the States to start the guide dog school. And after a split of a second, he said, he didn't change my life. He revolutionized my life. It's a revolution for him. It's not just a change. So I have so many stories about, yeah. I still remember many times people coming here for the first time. And so I have so many good, amazing memories of watching people after the first walk. So many times I see them after the first walk, finish the walk, kneel down, hug the dog, and of course tears. So more than once, many times. And also people that came to have a guide dog and they fear walking at nighttime. It's a different walking daytime and nighttime, whether you're blind or not, because it's dark and it's different feelings. And some people are before having a guide dog have the fear walking outside with a cane at nighttime. So, and to see them after the first night walk with us again, many times, kneeling down, hugging the dog, and cry. And so many times I cry with them, So we are all human beings.
Ellie, the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind is an amazing organization, and there's a Friends of here in Toronto, which also is extraordinary in terms of its reach, the number of people who are supporting it. There are so many ways of doing that. One way of doing it, which I find quite fascinating, is that you can actually, for a certain amount of money, a donation, you can name a dog. So what I'd like you to do, Ellie, is just give a pitch for the Israel Guide Dog Center. Like, why should people become involved? Why should people donate?
Well, I mean, everyone's got their personal, favorite charities, and there's hundreds and hundreds of wonderful charities in Canada and in Israel. And so whatever you're doing now, I would say keep doing it. But what I love about the Israel Guide Dog Center is it brings together a number of things that are very important to me. It brings together the idea that we want to help people with disabilities, and why that was so powerful. I forgot to mention on the March of the Living is that the Nazis for victims were not Jews; they were people with disabilities. So the people coming on the march who were blind were sort of doubly invested in the program, both because they were Jewish and because they were disabled. So first of all, it brings to get my passion of helping people with disabilities to the fore, because you can do that. Secondly, my passion and love for the state of Israel and the people of Israel has been since my birth. So that's a second passion of mine. And thirdly, it's my love of animals, and this beautiful relationship that you see between every single blind person and their guide dog is also fostered by this organization. And lastly, It is nonpartisan. It's not right wing. It's not left wing. It's not religious. It's not secular. It helps Israelis and Arabs. It's a wonderful organization that reaches across all lines and does just so much good for so many people. And I should say, more recently, well, it started off mostly for blind people. Now we're helping a lot of people with PTSD, especially people who are traumatized by the war. So it touches so many different aspects of my beliefs, my core values, my passions, and I think many people out there would also feel the same way.
Eli, we're going to let you go. Because if I don't, I figure you'll take over here.
Okay, can I say goodbye?
Yeah, please say goodbye. Yeah.
No, can I sing you all the best, Avrum? Thanks for the opportunity. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. No, I know that yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to again to take what just Eli said and to thank for we are limited to mention all the amazing people in Canada, in Toronto mainly, but in other parts. So forgive me for all the names that I'm not going to mention, but the community are so warm and to help us, and let me thank them for doing it in the past, present, and future. And this friendship, it's the continuation is needed, and so I thank all of you in advance and for what you have done in the past. I'm listening now.
You seem like a man who's very mabsut. Mabsut is an Arab word for satisfied. I know you have 2 children. You have grandchildren. You just had a grandchild a couple of days ago, Masal Tov. I'm really fascinated by what you said about a half hour ago when you mentioned that you're very fortunate, you're very blessed because over the last 40 years you've had a focus, and I think that's a very important point to discuss a little bit because a lot of people we're seeing nowadays do not, and there's an epidemic throughout the world, and it's called loneliness, right? And very often loneliness is a consequence of really not having meaning and purpose in your life. Talk to me a bit about that. Did you, over those 40 years, did you ever think about stopping? Did you ever think about leaving? I know you've grown the organization dramatically, which means the answer to that question is likely no. But how can we impart to our listeners and our viewers the idea of finding passion in life?
Well, I think the challenge is all over the world. The statistics says that the young generation not going to be stable and sustain and stay in the same place for more than 6 months or a year, and they're going to go from one place to another. I need stability. I think stability gives win-win for my soul, for myself, for my family, but and for the people that we serve. So for me, I know it only one way. So I'm not sure if I'm objective enough to answer, but I think the challenge that we have here, the Israel Guide Center for the Blind, besides this support to be given by individuals, foundations, etc., is to find the right young Noachs, men and women that will be in their mid-20s and to devote their life with us for as long as possible. But we have to be very practical. You're not going, it's a different time. So we need to be creative and sensitive and try to give them, our employees, our team, a sense of present and future for them to grow within the organization. So we need to be very creative. We have a very, very special team here. I have a co-CEO, Carmel Rice, and other managers and HR people, and we need to think how we cannot think about Noach in the 80s. It's a different world. So we need to listen to the new generation and be creative and how to keep them motivated.
And it's not only your professional team. The Israel Guide Dog Center has more than 1,000 volunteers. And, the volunteers that really, really make my ears perk up is like a dog. are the ones that you get a puppy at 8 weeks old, right? Now, somebody has to raise that puppy for the first year. How? So that it shouldn't be scared of people, so that it can acclimatize in terms of many different social environments. So you choose a lot of students, right?
Yeah, we have a situation that we have a long waiting list for people who wants to do it, which is crazy. We raise about 150 or 160 puppies a year, and we have people waiting for them. There's a waiting list for people to raise a puppy for a year, knowing that a year later they need to say goodbye and to be separated. So we did quite an incredible marketing. I don't know if you could see. No, maybe no. This is live
Not
camera
okay.
of a mother with 10 puppies.
Oh yeah. Now I see.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
that's
good.
a live camera just 50 meters away from my office.
Very good.
Yeah, so we are fortunate enough to have so many good volunteers that decide to give their love and affection and time and patience, knowing that a year later they have to say goodbye to these puppies. And
Yeah, that must be very challenging. That's one of the questions that the volunteers are always asked. How do you
yeah,
let go? How do you let go of the dog at the end of the year?
we do have a very special separation meeting when they give the dog, when the dog is 12, 13, 14 months, they come here. And we have a very deep ceremony for them to say goodbye to the dog, and we don't forget them.
Noach, I want to wrap things up, giving you the opportunity one more time to share with our viewers, with our listeners, um, something more about the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind, giving them the opportunity to volunteer, the opportunity to donate, the opportunity to visit when they come to Israel. Just tell us a bit more about the center and how we can become involved.
I think the best for Canadians is to approach the office led by Tara Derek and just look for us, Canadian friends of the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind, and communicate with us. And we will either through Tara or from here with my team, Dennis or Lisa or Noach, and we like to communicate. And I think the most important thing is to come when situation allows you to come over and come and visit us, see the puppies, see the dogs, meet us. And of course, when we come over to Canada, we would like people to invite us to the like Abonim and other places, people's homes, and to have parallel meetings and to schools and to come and share with the community with what we do over here. And the most important thing is, as I said, come over, visit, and then you can become an ambassador and tell others. So every time you come to Israel, and we are very accessible. We are just 20 minutes south of Tel Aviv. It's not like in Kiryat Shmona or Metula or Eilat. We are very near Tel Aviv, 20 minutes from Tel Aviv, 40 minutes from Jerusalem. Very easy to approach us. And for everybody to come and visit, I can promise a joy and very fulfilling visit, very deep and meaningful visit here. Some prefer the four-legged, some prefer the two-legged. I prefer the six-legged, the togetherness, but we are okay for all.
Do you ever go to the Nona and Mimi restaurant nearby?
The Nona and
In Nessiona, I believe it is.
it's maybe 40 minutes away from my home.
It's 40 minutes. Yeah,
40 meters, I mean.
It's 40 minutes. I'm just trying to be a show off here because I did some research into where you're located, and you have actually a beautiful environment in Beit Ovid, right? Beit Ovid.
What? We are near Moshav Beit Oved. Yes, we are. Yeah,
The Moshe.
it's a Moshav. We are west, 100 meters from the Moshav. But
It was founded in 1933, so it's a very rich environment, and you're building beautifully within your organization based on donations that are coming in, and, creating more kennels and so on. So people, you should be involved in this. This is not only spending time with our much beloved dogs, kolev, it's the Hebrew word for dog, means all heart, but it's a real, true, passionate way of helping human beings who are open to our help, and that is wonderful.
Thank you, Avrum. And going back to what you said to Eli, I think the secret between me and the dog is that it's an unconditional love. It's unconditional. It's not like that the dog says, only if you wash the dishes, I love you. It's a real deep love. Besides the fact that I feed the dog, but it's an unconditional love.
Yes. Well, it's so unconditional that when you were asked in an interview, how you determine which road your dogs are going to go on after a year of spending time with the students, your answer was, well, here's what we do. We have a meeting with the dog. And you said this is what you said in the interview. You go, and I say, Kinderlach, what do you want to do with your life?
We asked them, yes.
That was actually.
We have to be very, very, very sensitive with our dogs. And it's not just about the people, it's about the togetherness. And we need to make sure that the dog has a good life.
We have been talking to Noach Braun. Noach is the co-founder of the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind. And he's the co-founder, and he is now the CEO, and he has been since its inception. We want to thank him very much. We want to thank your wife, your family, and all of the people who are involved in the center for doing something so special. And as I said before in our discussion, Noach, when we watch you here in Toronto or in Canada or wherever people are watching the show, we get an enormous amounts of inspiration from you because of the Israeli neshama, because of the soul that our people have who are living in Israel, the chizuk, like they say, the strength, the bravery, and the courage. And I want to thank you on behalf of everybody, really, for standing up for all Jewish people everywhere and for making sure that we're secure and that we're safe. And we never forget that. We never forget that. We are behoven to Israeli parents, to Israeli grandparents, to families in Israel for being on the front lines of the Jewish people. We send our kids to university once they hit 18. You send your children to the army. And for that, we are deeply, deeply appreciative. So thank you for that, Noach. And we wish you well. If people want to be in touch with Noach or the center, just go online. It's right there here in Toronto as well as in Israel and the UK and other such places. Until then, make sure that you're involved in the war effort. Step up and do something. It's extraordinarily important that every single Jew in the world is helping to win this war and to make it easier for people who are representing us on the ground with their boots on, fighting for us, and in Israel and other ways. Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. Noach Braun, thank you once again. And, God willing, you should just grow and grow and continue to help many, many people. Like my mother says, Sei gesinnt.
Thank you so much, Avrum. And
Thank you.